What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. No Chris today. He's a little bit under the weather. He's also already headed to Orlando, getting busy and getting active. So, playoff time, people are fighting through everything, as we know, with Jarrett Allen, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. So is Chris. So we're giving him the night off to get some extended rest ahead of Game 6. But I'm here with my man, Jimmy Watkins, columnist, cleveland.com, and we're going to hold it down for y'all today. So, Jimmy, first and foremost, how you doing, buddy? Playoff season, how you feeling?
It's been a long series, but I feel probably better than Chris does. There's nothing worse than a sick travel day, man. That is a grind. So we're thinking about you, buddy.
For real. Weather changes going from, Cleveland weather, man, been 40 degrees to 70 degrees. I'm like, pick a side, please. But, we're going to get into Game 6, our preview of what's going to happen. I think, if I remember correctly, we both changed our predictions to the Cavs are going to win in 7 games. Tell me why you changed your prediction, Jimmy, and if you still hold stern on that.
I haven't held stern on a single prediction I've made about this series. But I think I'm feeling pretty good about 7 still. The Cavs showed me very little that suggests they can win on the road in Orlando. No, that's not true. They had a good half. One good half out of 4 in Orlando. And then one pretty bad half and 2 of the worst I've seen. Just fall apart in 5 minutes. So I don't know that it'll be that, but I'm in the camp with the Cavs where I'll believe it when I see it, when they beat the Orlando Magic on the road.
Because there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of speculation that goes on, especially in the playoffs. You want to talk and be strong and say things, and especially the players and post-game press conferences, and they want to say that they believe in their team, even though we heard that when they were in Orlando that they were kind of going against each other and not playing together. That's a telltale sign of what you don't want to happen in the playoffs, especially when you have veteran leadership that you went and got for these specific moments. My other thing is, I also said that the Cavs are going to win in 7 after originally picking 6 to begin the series, and I'm sticking with 7 games because when the Magic came to Cleveland and put up a tough fight at their house and still were able to score 100 points in what was supposed to be a defensive-minded game when they weren't even able to score 90 points in their first 2 appearances in Cleveland, it showed that Orlando has begun to adapt to whatever Cleveland's got going on, and doing so with Evan Mobley and without Jarrett Allen, which we're going to get into a little bit. I think you get to see the difference in teams and getting to see that the Magic have now seen almost everything that the Cavs have to push at them, and they've handled it, or they've kept it close. So, Jimmy, that's the next thing we got to talk about. Jarrett Allen's availability for Game 6. It's up in the air. We talked to J.U. Bickerstaff earlier today. He said that it was uncertain, but they're going to hope that he can give it a go. And, that's if he's able to. But we also saw Jarrett Allen sitting, laughing, and talking with Max Strus after practice, which he did not participate in. Let me say that first and foremost. And Jarrett is a fun-loving guy, but in Game 5, when the camera panned to the bench, Jarrett didn't look very happy as much as he usually does. He could have been in pain. He could have wanted to be on the court. Obviously, we didn't get to talk to him because he was injured. But those things, and then seeing him smiling and laughing after practice on Thursday, that's a decent sign if it comes down to it. For me, at least. What do you think, Jimmy?
I have no idea what to make of the Jarrett Allen injury. I was of the camp that I didn't think Bruce Rose would keep him out of the first game. The fact that they did, especially we need to paint a picture of how durable Jarrett Allen has been, not just through this, for this season, let's start there. He played in 81 straight games after missing the first 5. That is remarkable. particularly at a position where he is undersized a lot of nights and takes a pounding underneath. The second thing is Jarrett Allen has played, I wrote this the other night, I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. He's played at least 60 games in, I think, at least 6 of his 8 seasons in the NBA. So this guy shows up. That's part of the arc of his career. And so for this injury to be bad enough that it would keep him out of a pivotal playoff game, and now, I don't know how much 3 days can really do for you. I think I'm a little bit more skeptical than you are that we're going to see Jarrett Allen tomorrow.
I just think, rib injuries are tricky, right? Like, they can affect the entire body. They can affect breathing because it's a core injury. And as J.B. Bickerstaff said today in his press conference, you can't really move if your rib is bothering you. And, that's the thing that I think fans have kind of misunderstood. Or, a lot of people were even with Darius Garland, when he broke his face, when he fractured his jaw, was well, what's taking him so long? Why hasn't he come back yet? Yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, have you ever had a fractured jaw? Have you had your face wired shut and had to drink from a straw? That's the other thing with it's the same kind of concept with Jarrett. Him having a bruised rib, you don't know the severity of the bruise. The first 5 games of the season he was out was because of an ankle bone bruise. Another recurring theme that we've seen. And I want to be optimistic because I'm of the thought that the Cavs need Jarrett Allen in Game 6 if they're going to go to Orlando and win this game. Because, yes, I believe Evan Mobley showed a lot in Game 5, especially being able to make adjustments, because I don't know if you noticed this, but I saw it in the first couple of possessions where he would let somebody get by him because he's turned around. He's oh, Jarrett Allen's not there. Because they rely on each other so heavily. But he improved during the game, had that game-stealing block against Franz Wagner in the fourth quarter. And, I just still don't think he is a true 5. And with how long and how large the Orlando Magic is, I think I wrote this today, they have 6 players that are 6'10" and above on their roster, and the Cavs have 2. One of is Damian Jones. So it's a tall task for anybody, especially someone who is considered to be undersized at the center position. So I wanted to get your perspective on the Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen duo and what you think the Cavs need to have and how important Jarrett Allen's absence would be for Game 6.
Yeah, I want to start by pointing out something really important that you said there. I think that the through line between Darius is not just but his get back and how impatient people were sort of tapping their feet waiting for him, and even how that will play a role even if Jarrett plays tomorrow. Think about what Jarrett Allen's job is, right? Half the time, his job is to reach up, put your hands up, be vertical. That's sometimes the best thing you can do as a rim protector, right? What does that do? 1, it stretches your ribs a little bit. 2, it leaves them exposed. And I think part of the thing that people were missing about Darius when he first came back is how routine a play he injured the face on in the first place. It was just a regular drive with what you would assume to be regular contact. And then when he comes back, we're just expecting him to be able to go full verve, full contact all the time. Again, as if it didn't happen, as if that wasn't a traumatic thing that he lived through.
Right.
So I wonder what happens if Jarrett Allen plays tomorrow and in the first quarter he is, again, going up vertical to contest somebody or grab a rebound or whatever, and he takes an elbow or somebody shoulder checks him in the ribs. How does that affect him? Can he, even if he plays tomorrow, does that mean he can be knocked back out? I don't know. By the way, I don't know that it would necessarily be an accident. You don't think Mo Wagner is looking at Jarrett Allen's injury report and going, okay, I'm making a note of that. So that's the first thing. I just think that the Jarrett Allen injury, even if he's able to play through it, can still be a hindrance. The second thing is, with Jarrett and Evan together, number one, it gives the everybody else on the court a safety out. Like if you're Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell, you get caught in a switch that you don't like, you feel like you have protection behind you at all times. But perhaps even more so is the idea that the Cavs could have an elite rim protector on the court at all times. It's not, I mean, when the Cavs' best defensive lineups have both of them, but the idea that Orlando, which as we know is always trying to pressure the rim, put your head down and get there, always has to deal with either Evan Mobley, who is, I believe, second in the NBA in postseason blocks per game behind Chet Holmgren, or Jarrett Allen, who is less of a gaudy block number guy, but his at-rim, I think both of them during the regular season were top 10, top 15 in field goal percentage allowed at the rim. That, like the drop-off from that to, no disrespect, Tristan Thompson or Damian Jones, like, cannot be overstated. Particularly when Orlando has done a lot of their damage in these road games with their bench, with some of these second unit kind of mash units together on the floor, right? And like, think about like what did Markelle Fultz do? He attacks the rim. What did Franz Wagner, pick and roll maestro in Game 4, attacking the rim, putting people on his hip and keeping them there and scoring at the rim. Jarrett has also at times been the Cavs' most effective player overall. That shouldn't be overstated. But when we're talking about the Allen Mobley pairing specifically, it's the idea that you always have an anchor on the floor. That's why it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think what you said there is really important. Like, everybody was like, why are the Cavs going to Tristan Thompson? Well, Evan Mobley's not going to play 48 minutes. Like, he simply can't play 48 minutes. And it's the playoffs. Yes, he's going to play larger minutes than he's used to, but that 48 minutes for a guy who is still recovering again from a knee surgery and multiple injuries throughout a season is simply like, it's borderline impossible. Let's say that. But what I thought was a good move by JB Bickerstaff was what we talked about in the Game 5 post-game podcast. He went to Marcus Morris Sr. instead of George. It not only gives you height, it gives you strength, it gives you toughness, it gives you physicality. And Jimmy, I know you are writing about this for tomorrow, so I would love for you to go in depth on this topic about Marcus Morris and what he brings and what the proverbial fist fight he kind of brings mentality to this team.
I mean, it's a cliche at this point with this series, right? Like to talk about the physicality. At the same time, it's not, because this is what happened on the road the first two times, right? Like, the Cavs got punked those first two games. Like, Orlando brought more of insert your favorite buzzword here than they did, particularly in the third quarters of both of those games. I think they were outscored by 19 in one of the quarters and 20-something the other. I think the total number is 46 in third quarters in those two road games. And I think something that Marcus said after Game 5 was really important here, which was that someone asked him where he thought he made the biggest impact on Tuesday. That was Tuesday, right? Yeah, Tuesday. And he said leadership, which, again, kind of a cliche answer. But he was talking about the difference between leading from the bench and leading on the court. The difference between, we talked about it in the post-game pod, the difference between grabbing Darius Garland and saying, hey, man, their little thing is be special, or here's what I'm seeing, here's something you could have exploited, that maybe he has to wait a couple plays later in a timeout afterwards, or maybe Darius can make that adjustment on the very next possession because Marcus is out there. But basically what I'm right, like the Magic, what I was trying to get at, I asked Okoro today, do you think they're testing you guys when they start these little skirmishes? I think the Magic think the Cavs are punks, or at least punkable. That's why they keep trying to start all this stuff. I thought maybe the most interesting anecdote of the series so far was the one that Chris had in his Game 4 story when he mentioned that after Jalen Suggs and Darius Garland got in their little tiff where Suggs gets called for a reach in and then he won't let go of the ball. Then he kind of chest bumps Garland, and they do a little jawing. Is that after that happened, he went back to the bench, looked at his guys and said, I told you, or I told you, or something like that. Like, he saw something in the Cavs that said to him, they're unwinding right now, and they had clearly had a previous conversation about it. So Marcus Morris is the kind of guy that will set that straight, both because he is a calming veteran presence who has done all this before. He's played in 70 playoff games during his career. Played against LeBron. Like, he's done it all. That guy, that's a guy who is like, hey, I've been here before. We got through it. Don't worry about it. Now he could shake the snow globe on the other end. All right, like if Mo Wagner starts to get a little lippy or goes at Jarrett Allen's ribs, whatever. If Marcus Morris is on the court, there's gonna be a retaliation. Okay,
yeah,
someone's hitting the deck. I would be if these games unfold with a similar kind of arc. I'm sorry, this game unfolds with a similar kind of arc than the first two. I would bet very quickly that the referees are reviewing a play involving Marcus Morris. He's not going to mess around. He showed us what game was the Hornets game where he gave someone a forearm shimmy. Yeah, and he was saying no easy layups or whatever. He very much believes in that kind of philosophy where, like, I'll set the tone by beating someone up. I will do that. I'm not afraid. So I think Marcus Morris, the Magic are a young team still. They're which makes it a little bit more concerning that they see the Cavs as the punkable team and that they're actually doing it at times. But that means that I think they can be punked as well by someone with a little bit more stature and experience. So I think Marcus Morris is trying to punk the punker, and that's what I'm writing about tomorrow.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I don't know if you were there for this, but like in one of Marcus Morris Sr.'s like first interviews that we did with him before the Charlotte Hornets game happened, he was like, I'm trying to implement the no dunk rule. And I was like, you just got here and you're trying to implement something that hasn't been done in forever, it feels like. And I was standing there and like the reporters were laughing and he was dead serious. And I was just sitting there trying to contemplate, like, when was the last time we saw something that like that implemented? Like the no dunk rule and the no easy layups rule, something like that, like Bad Boy Pistons. Like that's what comes to mind for me. And knowing that he's on the court, like JB has said, because he has a different relationship with him because he was his rookie, basically. JB Bickerstaff was an assistant coach in Houston when Marcus Morris Sr. was a rookie. So that's his rookie. And he brought him along. It's been 13 years now in the NBA. They were talking while Marcus was on the court or on the couch with his kids, just chilling after he was bought out by the San Antonio Spurs. And JB was like, all right, man, blah, 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 blah. Like, we're just having a regular conversation. Next week, hey, we're going to pursue you. and JB Bickerstaff said in a recent press conference that they were scouring the earth for players, basically. And Marcus Morris Sr. fit every single bill that they were trying to make. Playoff experience, check. Toughness, check. Physicality, check. Scoring when needed, like you saw in Game 5, check. Like, those are things that they knew that they needed. And even Darius Garland said about Marcus Morris that he knew that he was going to get some toughness and a mid-range ball. But the tray ball was completely new for Darius, seeing him do that. And having that in your back pocket is game-wrecking and something that the Cavs seemingly needed from Marcus Morris Sr. in a time that they might not have known they were getting it.
He's a 37, I think, % career three-point shooter. Decent, right? But it's more like he's always he shoots it like he's a 40% shooter. I'll say that much. He's always, him and his brother have always had this kind of like, even like Marcus Morris when he played for the Clippers, it would, I think, sometimes drive the Clippers a little crazy. Like, Kawhi and PG are out here, and Marcus Morris is like, yeah, I'm taking this pull-up 16-footer because I'm feeling it right now. Like, that guy is still, like, he still has the confidence of the guy he was when he was at frickin' Kansas. Like, he was all this and all that, right? So I just think that's, like, you ever have a mouthy friend that has a tough friend?
Oh.
And you see that, like, the way they carry themselves when the tough friend is around is a little different because they know they have the protection, as opposed to when they don't have that's Marcus Morris is the tough friend. Marcus Morris can, like, Isaac Okoro said today that we have to come out and throw the first punch. And that's the right thing to say, right?
Everybody said it at this point.
The Magic don't care about Isaac Okoro's first punch. No disrespect. Like, they don't. Isaac Okoro's playing in, like, his 10th career playoff game. I don't recall him ever, like, punching or doing anything of that sort to anybody. He's a tough player. He plays really good defense. All of that. I'm not trying to take a shot at the guy, but, like...
Well, let me pause you for a second. He did do something this series when Evan Mobley got shoved into the stands by Mo Wagner. He did check Mo at half court. So, obviously... He was more so pushing around and talking, but I know what you're talking about.
He's not moving the needle.
Yes.
Isaac Okoro's first punch ain't moving the needle. Marcus Morris's first punch might send you to the locker room. That's the difference.
Yeah, I agree. So, all right, I want to move a little bit away from this because we've got into that pretty good. And I asked the subtexters to give us some things that they wanted us to talk about. And one of them said, why is Karis LeVert not being as productive as he has been in the regular season? I want to say that it's really hard when you're getting minimal minutes, rotations are changing, you're no longer the first person off the bench every single game, to not only know your role, especially when Darius is being an attack-minded, and that's usually your role because he's usually a pass-first guy, and then Donovan also wanting to get his stuff down. And also, like Chris has said multiple times on this podcast, sometimes you just go into a slump and at the wrong time. And that's seemingly what's happened with Karis. A mixture of all of those things. Having to deal with sometimes the best defender on the court because they're willing to give the secondary defender for point guards or shooting guards or perimeter defender to Darius Garland. But I just think his opportunities have been few and far between at this point in this series. And he had a good game. He did. He had a good game when he had 8 points. Sure, it wasn't the best game.
I think he had 15 in one of the garbage time games, too. So,
yeah.
Hats off to you.
But, Jimmy, what do you think with what comes down to it with rotation and guys like Karis and why their impact might be a little less in the playoffs?
I think this is why Karis LeVert is a sixth man and not a first or second option on a legitimate playoff team. He's a microwave scorer. He's like by definition, sixth men are kind of streaky, right? Like on their best days, they can carry you offensively. They can be the difference in the game because they come in with the second unit when you're just trying to basically tread water, and they can push you over the top. The great six man can do that. The downside is most of these guys are kind of a roller coaster ride, and sometimes they don't bring it to the level that they need to. I think that's what's happening with Karis right now. I mean, like, it is true. You're making a good point in that when the playoffs come around, your big dogs are going to become even bigger dogs, right? Like, I think Donovan Mitchell's usage rate is like 33% right now. Darius Garland is going to – the star players are going to take more opportunities when the stage gets heightened, right? That doesn't, like, I think the Cavs would be thrilled to give Karis LeVert more opportunities to initiate and score, create shots for himself or others. He's just not doing it, man. And That's a problem. I mean, like, that's a big problem, obviously. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But, like, this is a trend that has persisted throughout the series. This is a huge trend for Game 6. Games 3 and 4 in Orlando. The Magic outscored the Cavs by 38 in bench points. That's not good. And then what? That's not good. 89 bench points for Orlando. Their bench brought it at home, which is that's how it's supposed to work, right? You expect a little regression from your role players on the road, but at home, when the crowd is lifting them, they'll have the juice for you. That hasn't even been the case at home for the Cavs. And in the 3 home games, they're getting outscored by 22 by Orlando's bench. That's just not good enough, man. Like, I feel like that we keep coming back to that, which is alarming. Like, for as many, we want to talk about schematic adjustments, we want to talk about, a different kind of rotations, try this guy, try that guy. Some of these dudes just need to be better with the opportunities that they have. Karis LeVert is chief among them.
I agree. And I think that brings us to the next question when we're talking about rotations, and obviously that begins with the starting rotation when Jarrett Allen's not in, because that becomes a rotation. Because, like we saw, Marcus Morris Sr. played more minutes in Game 5 than Isaac Okoro did. So that's where the question lies, Jimmy. From a subtexter, do you start Marcus Morris Sr. in Game 6 over Isaac Okoro? What's your thought on that?
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. And again, I do think that, like we said before, when we were previewing the Marcus Morris, George Niang rotation, I do think that JB is more willing to consider an increase in Marcus's role because he knows him that well. And it doesn't hurt that Isaac is another guy who could you could point to and say, not bring it to the level they would want him to. At least I'll give him this. In game 5, at least he was putting them up. He I think he might have hit his first 2 corner threes, which was really encouraging. He finished 2 for 7 from 3 and 2 for 10 from the field. Okay, at least but the fact that he's shooting them, that is better than the alternative, right? Game 4 in Orlando.
100%.
Game 4 in Orlando. This dude took 0 shots. Not just 0 points. Didn't attempt a shot. That can't happen. And so, at the very least, I think Isaac. 2 things. One, you don't want to mess with Isaac's confidence because he's already in a shaky place as a shooter, right? And Marcus, because particularly if Jarrett doesn't play, like every time you take someone out of that second unit, you're taking a little bit of that energy away, right? So you got to be careful here on both fronts. But at the very least, I could see a quick hook. I could see a sharp decrease in minutes, particularly if Marcus is hitting shots the way he was in Game 5. He's not the defender that he once was. It's clear. He was never the defender that Isaac Okoro is now, even at the peak of his powers. But he's kind of like this is gonna sound a little weird. He's a little chestier than Isaac Okoro. You know what I mean? Like maybe a little bit better built to absorb those shoulders from Paolo Banchero. Maybe a little and again, this is where we get back to like Marcus's intangibles. Maybe he just knows a little bit more, like a crafty move here or there, a jersey tug that he knows how to do in the playoffs that maybe Isaac doesn't know. Just something else that might throw Paolo or Franz or whoever he ends up defending. That could play a factor there too.
100%. And to your point, before I get into mine, Marcus Morris Sr. has guarded 6'9" LeBron James. Probably one of the strongest people at his peak of his powers. And was pushing LeBron around for a good bit of that series, a little bit, on the defensive end. And sure, that is something, the strength aspect is something that Paolo has over Isaac Okoro. Even he mentioned it in his press conference today. But I think when it comes to JB Bickerstaff and his starting lineup and how he forms his defenses, and without Dean Wade and without Jarrett Allen, my thought for what JB Bickerstaff is thinking is, let me give Evan Mobley the most help that I can. Because Isaac Okoro is not only good for guarding Paolo, but also on switches. He can guard almost anybody else on that court, other than who Evan will be handling, which will more than likely be Wendell Carter Jr. And everyone else, Franz Wagner, like, that's the main one. And he's going to be able to keep up with him with his quick feet. Marcus Morris Sr. might be a little slower. So I think I'm more in agreement with you on it would be a quick hook for Isaac. I think they would stick with the same starting lineup because they did that when Evan Mobley and Darius Garland were out earlier this season and had the lineup of Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Isaac Okoro, Jarrett Allen, and Dean Wade, which, oh my goodness, that was a defensive monster for opposing teams to go through. And clearly, this is a scenario that we're talking about right now without Jarrett Allen, without Dean Wade. And those are two of the best defenders in the league. And I think I looked this up the other day, Jimmy. Of players who have played 50 or more games this season, 50 or more, it's a little bit of a bigger sample size than like 25 or whatever. Dean Wade is third in defensive rating in the entire NBA. Like, that is for the regular season, obviously, because Dean Wade hasn't played in the playoffs. But that is just a testament to his powers on the defensive end. And I think having somebody with Isaac Okoro who knows that his job is defense and then stretching the floor on offense, and coupled with the fact that he's been hitting shots and growing his confidence. I don't know about you, Jimmy, but when he was taking shots today, he looked confident. He was talking smack while hitting them. Like, that's just something that I noticed, because Isaac usually, he'll code switch when he gets to the media. Well, he'll go very quiet and want to give very straight to the point answers. But whenever he's got guys around, he's talking smack, doing his thing, and more than likely knocking down shots. So if he's able to handle that confidence and carry that over to Orlando, obviously it was in a practice facility earlier today with not raging fans at the Kia Center screaming at him. But if you're able to take that with him over to Orlando, I think that's a different element. But I do agree, if he's not producing on the offensive end, David Bickerstaff might be willing to throw Marcus in there and see how he sticks with Paolo and see how that works out.
Yeah, you gotta give it a try. You can't. I mean, first of all, to a certain extent, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Like this lineup, good enough to get a win last in Game 5. But I think your point about Isaac's feet is a good one, because it's not just. I'm thinking about the guards. Like if Marcus Morris is on the floor instead of Isaac, that's a matchup Jalen Suggs is going to want to go after, or whoever the smaller, twitchier ball handler is. And it's okay. The other side of that is, it's great that Isaac was confident at practice today. Again, I'm in a place where I need to be swayed that the Cavs are going to bring it on the road. Again, I think I'm spitballing. I think he was like 0 for 4 total from 3 in 2 games on the road the first time around. So let's see it.
Yeah, that's also why I have Cavs in 7, because their road games, coupled with how they guarded and defended in Game 5 at home, did not weigh on my heart enough to be like they're going to go to Orlando and pull out a W. Because if it's 104-103 at home with your fans going nuts, you're going to have to show me. But, so I think for the last question, I want to circle all the way back, come full circle moment with you. Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen. Did you see enough from Evan in Game 5 to say that the Cavs are nearing the possibility of going away from that 2 big lineup when it comes to next season, or maybe even in the playoffs, especially with the shooters that they currently have around them?
I certainly saw a glimpse, man. We don't need to go too far into why it's better to have one big on the floor for offense, right? Like Donovan Mitchell explained it in the press conference afterwards. You put 4 shooters on the floor. That's 4 people that the defense actually has to respect, which means it's hard. It's harder for them to help off. It clears the driving lanes for Darius and Donovan, right? The reason that this pairing exists in the first place is because the Cavs saw teenage, underdeveloped, skinny Evan Mobley. They're like, okay, the vision for this guy, eventually game-wrecking 5-man defensive anchor who can just hang out down there by himself and change games. Right now, though, we need to get him. It also didn't hurt that the Brooklyn Nets, during the James Harden trade, were just like, does anyone want Jarrett Allen for a cereal box? Here's a really good player. Anyone want him? And the Cavs were like, yeah, we'll take him. That helped. But a guy like Evan Mobley early in his career needed a guy like Jarrett Allen to help absorb some of these body bruising big men that we have in the NBA. But this is the Magic would like to live in the paint. That's their ideal place to attack on the offensive end. They had their lowest point in the paint total in Game 5 without Jarrett Allen. They still out-rebounded the Cavs, I think by 4. I think it was 43-39. But, you'll take that. Evan Mobley had 13 of those things, and it helped that everyone else was chipping in behind him. And, oh, by the way, coincidentally, this is the first game in the series that the Cavs scored 100 points. So that's check right there. That's the offense that you expect when you take a non-shooter off the floor, the offensive bump you expect, although, 104 is still not – it's not showing me where your weight's at necessarily, but it's progress. It's progress. It's the rim protection was – Evan, that last block was – can't be over. There's 2 dudes on the earth that can make that play. His rim protection overall was really good. He can still switch out on the perimeter when he needs to, and the rebounding was not a disaster, which has been the biggest question about this team for a long time, going back to last year. Why aren't they? See, even when they had 2 bigs on the floor, they've been a middling rebounding team. So I'm not ready to to fire up the trade machine for Jarrett Allen just yet. That would be interesting to see what we could get for him. But that's a glimpse. If this happens sooner than we think, I think you could point to that Game 5 as sort of a watermark moment for Evan Mobley's development and maybe the fall of the 2 bigs era in Cleveland.
I think it's interesting because obviously we look back to the lineup that we've talked about a couple of times on this podcast already when Evan Mobley was out. And Jarrett Allen and Donovan Mitchell basically led this team to be one of the best teams in the NBA. We also have to mention that they had one of the easiest stretches during that period against teams that they should have beaten. But Jarrett Allen was on the cusp of becoming an all-star. Donovan Mitchell was an all-star, potentially even an MVP candidate at the time. And so, yes, that's the give and take that you have on that. It doesn't have to just be Evan Mobley. It can be Jarrett Allen by himself as well because he deters opponents from going into the paint because of his defense and his strength as well. I think that's another thing that people take for granted is how strong Jarrett Allen is. Mm-hmm. The amount of players he had to guard in that stretch. There was a stretch where he had to guard Bam Adebayo, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Yusuf Nurkic. There are some big guys that he was just handling. And every game we would ask J.U. Bickerstaff, and it's all right, what's the mindset for Jarrett Allen? And he would kind of look around the room and he'd be like, be Jarrett Allen. Because that's the expectation. So
that's the thing about Jarrett Allen that kind of that I love about him. He's clearly you've watched what you just said, the way he absorbs all this punishment, the way he can bang bodies with dudes who are objectively bigger than him, guys who are he's given up 20 pounds to, and he's hanging in there. And you watch him dominate the rebounds like Wilt frickin' Chamberlain first 2 games of the series, Bill Russell, whatever. But there's nothing extra, you know what I mean? Like, you expect a guy who plays that way to be flexing all the time and screaming, but he just goes up there and he goes, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Jarrett Allen,
he's a unique guy, man.
Very unique. And Jarrett Allen literally celebrates more when there's a defensive 3 seconds call than when he dunks the ball. That's
one of my favorite things. Just real quick on the Mobley thing. If we're looking for a timeline on a potential breakup of the Twin Towers, or the sort of the official knighting of Evan Mobley as an NBA 5 full time, his rookie deal goes through 24-25. He'll be extension eligible after this year. Spoiler alert, that extension is going to be on the table, and I would expect I would expect it to be a max extension, and if it is, I'd expect him to sign it. So then that would kick in 2025-26. There's kind of your deadline. That's because if you're paying your big man max dollars, he better be able to hold down the paint by himself. That's a loose timeline for you.
Yeah, and I mean that's great context. I just think right now, at the point of Evan Mobley's career, it is really nice to have Jarrett Allen back there with him. And I think the Cavs surrounding unit has talked about how much Jarrett Allen means to this team. Talking besides basketball, talking about the communication on the defensive end, talking about the joy that he brings, the stability that he brings. Like, J.B. Bickerstaff said probably during the season, like halfway through the season, that Jarrett Allen's best quality is dependability. There is no better quality in the NBA than dependability. I said, he literally has said that he rolls out of bed and is confident because Jarrett Allen's going to be on the floor. Like, he came into the playoffs saying that. Like, he said, all right, so I forget, Donovan Mitchell was like, I didn't really sleep. Jarrett Allen or J.B. Bickerstaff was like, I got plenty of sleep. I knew who we had on the floor. Like, I knew we had Jarrett Allen. And that's like the calming essence that Jarrett Allen brings with his like big afro, no nonsense, like just do your job and get out mentality.
He ushered, he's the guy I think that deserves a good chunk of the credit for ushering them through all those injuries this season, because when Darius went down, when Mobley went down, when Donovan was in and out at the end of the lineup at the end of the year, Jarrett Allen was always there. I think that's probably why JB was thinking that way this season. He was in a season where you could not depend on literally anything for more than 6 weeks. Jarrett Allen was there the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, even Max Strus, the guy that hates being off the court, was injured for a little bit. Jarrett Allen missed the first 5 games of the season. And since then, up until Game 5, he had played every single game. That's 81 games, including the first 4 games of the playoffs. So, like, basically an 82-game season? Sure, we gave props to George Niang, who had an Iron Man season, played all 82, but that's different. Like, not many people can say that they do that. But
starter minutes, too. Starter minutes.
100%. And Jarrett Allen, I think, was one of the higher minutes of this team for, like, this entire season. So that just tells you what he's bringing on a nightly basis. But, yeah, Jimmy, Cavs in 7. Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley. We'll see if Jarrett can come back for Game 6. If not, Evan Mobley might have another chance to prove to fans why he can hold down the paint on his own against a burly, lengthy Orlando Magic squad. But I think that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But until next time, remember to subscribe to Subtext. If you want to get insider information about anything going on with the Cavs, this is where you go to do it. Also, if you want to have your questions answered or have them on the pod, do that as well. But to do so, you got to sign up for a 14-day free trial or go to cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue button at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy. But we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around, because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. You can also just join the Cavs community and get insight on what we got going on, where we're eating. I know Chris is in Orlando, probably munching already, but I know you get that when you subscribe to Subtext. So, until next time, y'all be safe. We out.